Hello. Well, you tuned into the Will Fix It team, and I'm in front of a tranny. Alright, this video right here is going to be how to check or properly check to see if you've got a blown head gasket. And this procedure, it works on just about every vehicle, and it leaves the guesswork out. It's you got a lot of people out there that'll say, I put that stuff in the radiator. It's supposed to detect if there's a head gasket leak, and it turned out pretty color. And I'm like, I mean, I guess that's one way to do it. And that stuff pretty much operates under the guise of it reacting to any, like, I guess, exhaust gas or something that crosses over into the cooling system. It's a chemical reaction that takes place. However, it's still, sometimes it's a little wonky. I've seen water get in cylinders. I'm going to show you right quick, but I've seen water get in cylinders that not passed through the other way yet. It wouldn't show. I put that stuff in there and it doesn't show that the head gasket's blown. And I go, well, let me just do some testing myself. And lo and behold, what I'm going to show you right here is what we find when you do it the right way. So please hang out, hit that like, subscribe, and share, and let's go. Okay, so digging into this in detail, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the cover plate where the coil packs are, or we're going to remove the spark plugs. But first, before I do that, I had actually ran the vehicle up to operating temperature with this hooked up, because if you got a blown head gasket, some of the signs of that is abnormal pressurization of the cooling system way sooner than what it normally would be. Like, when you run the vehicle and it's getting up to temperature and you drive it for a ways, you can feel the hose tighten up because, typically things will expand. Anything will. Metal, a solid, liquid, or a gas, when you change the temperature, contraction or expansion takes place. So in order to simulate that or amplify that effect, I've got this pressure tester on. So before I started the vehicle up, I hooked this up to the radiator. Then I started the vehicle up and I actually can monitor the system as it starts to heat up. And right off the gate, this thing started to kind of climb up with pressure, like as soon as I started it. And what's happening when that does that, inside of the motor where your cylinders are, there's actual a gasket that seals the cylinder head to the engine. And the gasket or the metal surface of the cylinder head can warp whenever something is overheated. And then that warpage will allow for the pressure that it takes to push your pistons down in the combustion process to bleed over into the cooling system. And if you've ever done any work on certain vehicles like Hondas especially, the way that they're set up, they're similar to motorcycle engines, with the cylinders being extremely exposed to all the combustion chamber gases because they're surrounded completely by coolant. There's no like in between little ribs, so it's easy. It's more common for these to do what they do when they blow the head gasket because of that. Instead of leaking into the oil or leaking into the outside area of the engine, it leaks right into the cooling system. It'll bleed combustion gas into it. And then what happens then is vice versa. The cooling from the cooling system will transfer into the cylinders, and then with water in the cylinders or coolant, then it causes the vehicle to misfire. So another good sign of a head gasket issue is the vehicle will kind of misfire or run poorly on a cold start, or if it's depending on how bad the gasket is, you can shut it back off and then maybe an hour later go back and there'll be coolant back in there again, and you'll have a misfire or rough running condition. So to verify that that's what's the problem, so we got a way to show the customers. I'm going to take a video of it actually. I'm going to pull the spark plugs out. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like when water gets in the cylinders. And sometimes, the way these are set up, it's really hard to see it, but I'll try to get the camera up, but sometimes it just shoots up and hits the top of the hood insulation. So with the 4 spark plugs out, the very last one, number 4 cylinder, which I suspect there's more water than what, but this one here, I think the water level got high enough where you could actually see some of the coolant on the spark plug. Let's see if I can dab some out onto my hands right quick here. Sometimes you can dab a little water. If I screw these back in and bump the motor around, you'll probably see it. But let's take a look inside of the cylinder to see if we can see anything level sitting up. Let's grab this thing in real time here. Due to the nature of the camera shot, I can't actually get it to see in the holes, but looking at that last one, the top of the piston is pretty wet. It's got some wetness on it. So what we'll do now is I'm gonna, it's not, I don't see water just sitting on top of the pistons like like sometimes you do. So what I'm gonna do is just take and just screw the plugs in by hand with the coil packs unplugged. I'm just gonna bump the motor around one time and just see if I can't get some coolant to splash on these plugs, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, so I don't have anything. I just got the plugs threaded into the motor, just snugged up. I'm gonna bump the motor around a time or two. Usually that kind of gets it. Let's see here. We're going to do this in real time while the camera's rolling. Let's see what we pick up. I'm going to go back to this very last cylinder first, because that was the one that looked kind of wet to begin with. So we'll go with that. Let's see. Oh yeah. Let's see if I can get it to dab out into my hand. It's kind of, you can't, it's hard to, there's not a lot there, but it doesn't take much. You can actually see the shine on the spark plug. You can see that better without my light, actually. You can see how that's just a little bit that I turn it over. That's not gas on that cylinder. You can smell it too. You can actually smell the antifreeze if you kind of stick your big nose onto it. Your big stupid nose like mine. I got a big stupid nose. All right, let's see what else pops up. Let's get the rest of these out. So that's, and then what I'm going to do is I've got to call the lady with a quote and all that. So I've got a few other vehicles to work on. So being it's not hydrolocked, we'll put it back together and I'll start it up, and you'll actually see in real time how this thing runs as it starts to, you know, displace the coolant and burn it off. Let's see if I see anything else. Not a whole lot going on there. There is a little bit of dampness on the end of the plug, but it's not like the one on the very end. Like I say, you can look down in there and see it's really, really wet. Get this other one out right quick. A little bit of rust on the end of this plug here, I think, made it kind of tough. Nothing on that. We're going to wire and wheel that. It's got a little bit of aluminum in there from, I think that the prior plug had rust on the end of it. So from the looks of it, the number 4 cylinder is the one that's got the most of the wetness on it. There's probably not enough, but we're going to take and try really hard to see if we can see any coolant come out of the cylinder. I'm going to bump the motor around with the plugs out of it. Sometimes you can get enough that comes out. You'll actually see it squirt up and hit the top of the hood there. Let me see if I want to eliminate this a little bit. And let's just see, is that helping or is that hurting me? Probably hurting me. I'm not a cameraologist when it comes to some of this stuff here. Let's see. Well, that's not getting us any. We'll see what that looks like. Let's just try this and see if we see anything. I don't suspect anything came up there. It was a minimal amount of water in the coolant in the cylinder. But let me put it back together, and we got to back it out to work on some other stuff. And so we'll get it together, and you'll see it skip when I crank it up. And by the way, I'd like to show you my technique for installing these spark plugs in case you're doing stuff. This is a rubber hose. Up your nose with a rubber hose, the sweat hogs would say. So we're going to reinstall the plugs. This one right here has got some aluminum in the threads, like it had somebody's kind of been, you know, sometimes when you run a vehicle long enough with coolant in the cylinders and it's straight water, it can start to pit up or pit up the end of the spark plug. I guess I got it in shot here, but it'll get rusty. And then when you go to take it out, it'll be hard coming out, and sometimes it can grab some of the threads. However, that's not the case. Somebody's put these plugs in here because of the misfire on the startup, and you know that's okay. Typical shade trees kind of just chase the problem what they see, like, oh, this thing kind of skips when it starts up. Let me put some new plugs. They'll start with the plugs. They don't. Well, let's put the coil packs in, and then, you know, really what it is this coolant getting down in there. So I'll finish this installation right quick. Let me just wire wheel this, and then I'll start it up, see what it sounds like. Well, we've got this thing at the exhaust pipe. I think you'll be able to hear the engine better here than just watching it under the hood. You're going to hear it skip for a little bit, and then it's going to kind of smooth out. And unless there's a lot of coolant in the system, you might not even see it do the white fog thing. We may. Let's just see what happens here. We're going to fire it up. All right, so you heard that. This is a cold start, by the way, so let's watch this thing heat up a little bit. I zeroed this out. This was zeroed out before I even started the vehicle. I had the needle all the way down, and you can see it's already building up pressure. And then another thing you can do too, and if it's bad enough, you can actually you'll smell motor in the coolant. You'll be like, smells like crankcase. But anyways, judging from the coolant we've seen on the spark plug, the way that the vehicle started up, you could even hear it sounded a little wonky at the exhaust back there. It sounded, you know, like one cylinder was down on compression. There's probably a little bit of a, that's the compression down on that one cylinder where the gasket is probably letting the coolant bleed by. Or, you know, you could actually hear it kind of weak on that one cylinder as it rotated. And then the immediate buildup of pressure. As you noticed, it built a lot of pressure up when I first started it, but after I zeroed it out, and it kind of just built a little bit of pressure. And what we've seen happen there is the actual metal start to kind of like come together. As things heat up, the metal expands that fast, and so the deterioration of the gasket and where the metal's warped on that really cold start, it allowed for that much pressure to bleed by into the system. That's what pressurized it, was that down on compression that went up into the cooling system, and that gave us that. It was showing almost 6 psi on the cooling system just that quickly, and after it ran for a minute and it smoothed out, that cylinder started to hit. The gasket sort of sealed back up a little bit. And what will happen is once you get it up to operating temperature, all that pressure builds up, it cools back off, coolant drips back down into the system. You get the misfire from the burning off of the coolant and the weak compression because the gasket's not sealing up very well. So that's how you test for head gasket issues, and that's some of the signs that you look for. And two, when an engine is building up pressure in the cooling system, typically what it'll do is it'll actually pressurize it past the radiator cap's ability to hold its normal holding pressure, which is usually between, depending upon sea level, 14 to 16 psi. It will start blowing into the overflow jug and overfill the overflow jug, start pushing it out and over there. And when it does that, an air pocket starts to form in the engine, typically in front of the water pump, cavitates the water pump won't circulate water, engine starts to overheat, and or as it does a convection cool process because of the added pressure in the system, you'll see that the temperature gauge fluctuate, go up and kind of bubble back down and back up and bubble back down. Some of the things that you look for, and that's how but definitely the way it ran, that was a good indication right there. And we've seen that coolant on that plug, the wetness, the dampness, the badness. So what we're going to do now, I've got to fix a invoice up, call the customer, and I will repair this engine. I will take it apart, pull the cylinder head off, have it sent to the machine shop, checked for any kind of imperfections, resurface the cylinder head, check the block for straightness. Typically, we're good there. And this car will last a long time and will save some money because I can probably do this repair for $1,200 to $1,500 depending upon what parts I need to get, as long as I can salvage all the timing chain stuff. Versus buying an engine for $1,500 to $2,000, which is what engines are costing nowadays, even used. Used engines, I haven't seen one of these yet less than $1,000 for one of these cars. So, you know, one that's worthy of putting in here. I mean, you might find one off of a Facebook marketplace and it came out of a car you couldn't even hear running. Good luck with that. Probably the same problem. But anyhow, I'll digress on that. But reman engines are $3,500 up easily. So this will take this old car that doesn't have a high resale value, make it usable again, and and as long as they don't run it hot, they'll get a lot of good years. And they've already repaired the problem. It was a radiator. You could tell it had a new radiator in it, so that's added less cost that won't be added to the bill. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit the like, subscribe, and share. And if you like what we're doing, you know, like I say, leave me a comment in the section of the comments, and I'll kind of guide the videos in a direction that you like. I do a lot of really neat stuff with carburetors and you know, I'm going to do a lot of electrical stuff. And so, but anyways, we're going to get out of here. Peace out.